and welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and wrestling's premier photographer, Dr. Mike Leno. But you guys are familiar with the other two guys in the corners, and that is longtime, sort of show host, Jonathan Schwartz, and also longtime sort of show host, Benny the Playa Scala, in his new 60-pound less frame that we were talking about before the show.
Benny looks Benny looks ready to go for action.
I'm ready to go.
Absolutely.
Like Pedro, I'm ready for any kind of action.
So it's been a little over 4 years since we've done a show directly about wrestling and food. And there's no real reason that we're doing this. I mean, it's not a holiday, it's not a food holiday coming up or anything. Last time we did it was right before Christmas. So, people were talking a lot about holiday foods. But I always find it's a fascinating subculture of wrestling to talk about wrestling and food. So, Mike, you're only with us for a few minutes, so why don't you open up and give us some of your wrestling and food thoughts?
Well, I wanted to see, I haven't seen Benny in ages. Jonathan, we email back and forth, but I miss gabbing with him. I have some memories. I guess I'll start with, because I'd known Sabu and Rob Van Dam when they broke in with Judge Dredd by the Sheik in that training thing, and then Memphis, and lots of indies and all of that sort of stuff, and getting him, driving up with Sheik and having actually Sheik made Sabu drive Sheik's famous old 70s Cadillac up from Dearborn, Michigan to whatever the venue was in Philly for, it was Joel Goodhart's very last TWA show, which begat ECW. But after ECW shows, the X number that I shot, maybe 7 or 8, this was up until the big pay-per-view, the very first one, Living Dangerously. They would take me out to both, because I wanted to go to both every time, the Philly cheesesteak places, and compare them, the most famous ones that were sort of like battling against each other for decades. And there would be a crowd of people around them. Obviously RVD came a little later to the thing. I'm forgetting times and stuff, but also Dallas Sportatorium. Always, the first time I went there, 74, 75, through whatever the end of Global was, it always smelled like funnel cakes because they had a lot of fried food. So if you guys are familiar with County Fair funnel cakes, and it was kind of magical. That was the most food smell or smell-o-vision, if you're a John Waters person, you know what I'm talking about, from whatever Divine movie that was, that had the smell-o-vision cards. But it was a magical scent. The Olympic Auditorium, my home-based territory in LA, there was a lot of Hispanic food at the concessions. And obviously there was always the smell of beer, but there was dulces, sweets, and you would see sodas that you'd never seen before that were like loaded. The strawberry fresas sodas at the Olympic Auditorium and some of the surrounding venues in Los Angeles, the Jules Strongbow venue that used to be Strellick Stadium, and I think it was Bakersfield, and Ventura County Fairgrounds, and El Monte Legion Stadium. There was all kinds of different Hispanic foods that I'd not been exposed to. Taquitos, starting in like 1968 and stuff. Even in Japan, when I was going there, particularly when I'd stay with my Gong editor, Wally Yamaguchi, who ended up being the Kaientai manager. He was such a mark for American wrestling. If you remember, he was the chop your pee-pee guy off to Val Venus.
Not one of the prouder moments.
When we would go, wherever we were going
these days.
Yeah, wherever we were going, like we were on the All Japan women's tour bus going to shows, outside, of where their dojo was located in Tokyo proper, or, like Onita had his FMW office for several years from like 89 through 91, 92 on the second floor of Wally Yamaguchi's 3-story home was considered like a mansion in Tokyo. Here in the States, it would be very small. It would be just like a regular 2 or 3-story house. But Wally loaned out, for some kind of fee, and that's where Onita on the second floor. But anyway, So we would go with them on the FMW tour bus or the Universal Shinma Junior, the Lucha group that had like everybody from CMLL came over there. Santo Jr., Pero Sr., Villanos, Brazos, Kendo, all of these great stars. Sometimes Kanek, those caras, and we would all go out to eat after. But if we were going with All Japan Women or the New Japan bus, because Wally like did stuff with all of them, and he'd promote shows with like some of the lower tier guys from all these different promotions, we would get bento boxes, and that was my first introduction. Well, that went back to '74, the first time I went over there, but bento box food and if you went to like New Orleans, some of the wrestlers took me out for alligator or croc meat. I can't remember what. The whole deal was, oh, it tastes just like chicken, and it sort of did, but it sort of wasn't.
Very dirty chicken.
Yeah, if you can't think about what you're eating, all the other foods I've named, incredible, but that stuff I just would try to take out of my mind where it was coming from. So. I'm forgetting where we had some. Oh, in St. Louis, the first time I went there, '74 to shoot at Kiel, and Larry Matisic always took care of me. But he and Diane Devine would take me out to Ted Drew's, and that was where the wrestlers loved to go after shows, but far enough away so the fans, marks, wouldn't follow them. And that was the place that had the cement mix milkshakes, where the thing was, they would give you your money back and let you keep the milkshake. If you could put a spoon in it, turn it upside down, hold it up for a minute. Have you guys heard about this there? And if any of it came out or dripped out, you get your money back. So it was like concrete. And I'm forgetting if it was in Kansas City the first time some wrestlers took me out afterwards for custard ice cream, which was like way thicker consistency, higher fat content. That was great, and also barbecue in Kansas City after the Kiel.
Custard has eggs in it. Custard ice cream has eggs in it.
You're right. I'm sorry. The barbecue in Kansas City after Kansas City Memorial Odd, and I'll come up with some more. But anyway, so that's sort of anyway. Obviously, going to Mexico City or even Acapulco or Tijuana to shoot, there was always really great food. Like after the Universal group was maybe 4 or 5 years, and that's all it lasted. But Shinma Jr. brought all the great Mexican stars over, and then we wouldn't go to Ribera's, which I've been to a total of 5 times. And I don't know what the big mystique is there, like just being a lowly magazine writer, photographer, Rivera's son would give me the jackets. I always got the jackets, and then he loaded me up. I wish I had time to. This isn't really food, although he had, and there wasn't just one Ribera's. They made a second one. It only lasted a couple of years. I got to go to that one with Wally, and for a time there, Dr. Steve Williams and Stan Hansen told me they thought sometimes when prices of beef were up that Ribera-san would sneak in horse meat to the restaurant. But anyway, there were some great Mexican restaurants in different parts, not in Tokyo proper, but other parts of Japan. And that's where all those lucha guys would want to go, that came in for the tours. And everybody, but I've eaten pretty much with every luchador. There weren't fans there. They never knew where we were. But Moskowitz was the only guy that would keep his mask on at the restaurant, even the shower.
It's been tough to keep that thing from getting dirty. So, Jonathan, you're all the way up in Canada, and Benny, not only you're in Florida, but you were originally from New York, which are two major, Toronto has its own. Well, what would you think, what food is Toronto known for specifically, if you say, Jonathan?
Well, the place we send the tourists to is a little place called Kensington Market. So there's Kensington Market, which is a really great kind of multi-ethnic market. It's basically shaped by waves of immigration into the city. So over the years, you've had everything from Chinese immigrants to Vietnamese to Mexican to Peruvian to you name it, and it's all kind of crashed into each other in that space. But if I'm going to send tourists somewhere, it's going to be a little bit further south to the St. Louis market for what we call the pea meal bacon sandwich. So it's basically not the Canadian bacon that you guys know, but pork loin, smoked, brined, rolled in cornmeal, grilled off, and served on a Kaiser bun with a bit of mustard.
Mm,
Really basic,
mm.
but that is the first place you go for quintessentially Toronto food. If you're looking for something that's a bit more substantial, we got everything. Again, Toronto is a city of neighborhoods shaped by successive waves of immigrants. So we have, I would say, the Chinese food we have stacks up with what you can get anywhere, the best places in the world. The Italian food we have, Portuguese food. Where I live in the city. I'm actually at an axis between one of the main Jewish neighborhoods in Toronto and what we call Little Jamaica. So if I turn left out of my house, um, deli, shawarma, falafel, you name it like that. If I turn right, best jerk chicken this side of Kingston. So it's
But
really
what would you say
What about
is
Indian food though? The Tiger Jeet
oh
Singh stuff.
well. So
That
the
bread
Singh
is
family,
fantastic.
yes. So the Singh family though is um, a little ways away in Brampton, Ontario. There's a very very big Indian and Sikh population there. And we have some great places here as well. But if you go into the suburbs, I think you get more of the real stuff.
Is Tim Hortons? Is that the Canadian?
yeah,
I'm
that's what
probably
we all
confused.
know.
Equivalent of Carl's Jr. or
Or like a Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Yeah, I would say it's closest to Duncan.
I know it's like fast food, but there's something else that's sort of a chain that's unique to Ontario that we hear about here in the States that really has some good stuff. And also, is it only in Quebec that poutine is served, or is it all throughout Canada?
So poutine's migrated throughout the country, and it's kind of considered a national dish at this point. But I would say if you want the real stuff, like the sauce is different. So most poutine places, if you get it in Toronto or Ottawa or Vancouver or anywhere else, it'll be like straight up brown gravy, cheese curds, and French fries. The sauce that they use in Quebec is a little bit different, and it's not necessarily a Montreal dish. It's basically where it
Mm.
kind of got started are on these little kind of snack bars on the like if you think about like when you go on the highways, there's these big kind of there's 15 different chains there, and you can get your fill up a
Truck
gas,
stop. Truck
or
stop.
Bucky's, I guess, is popular in the South, that kind of thing. Um, but before all that, you had these kind of small little mom and pop stands on the side of the road, and it kind of came out of that where you want something that's basically going to fill you up till your next stop. So it would be like French fries and the fresh cheese curds, and the sauce had like something different to it. It had kind of a sweetness as well.
Mm.
So it was a little bit
Mm-mm.
more, there was a bit more depth to it, I would say. Still
Now,
delicious.
now, Benny, you do a lot of traveling to ballparks. I know that you post a lot about your ballpark food that you sample. So why don't you tell the fans a little bit about some of the best stuff you've had at some of the parks you've been to?
I tell you what, my current go-to is I don't even I think it's called Baycare Stadium. They've renamed it a couple of times. It is the minor league. It's the Clearwater Threshers, the minor league Florida State League team for the Phillies, and about a half an hour from my house. But I'll go there. Usually I'll go there on a Sunday. Their games start at noon, and they have a local place called Delco's. It's a restaurant in Dunedin, but they have a stand at the ballpark. They make Philly cheesesteaks to die for. So
Mm.
I'll get there about 11:30, and then there's a little bar called McGillicuddy's, which has excellent craft beer on tap. And that's what I'll do. I'll get there early, get myself a cheesesteak, a craft beer, sit down, enjoy the Florida sun, and it's cheap. I mean, admission. I mean, especially now as a senior, for me, I think it's like $7. And it's kind of to me, it's kind of the equivalent of going to an indie wrestling card, where you're not going to the WWE. I mean, I'm not seeing the Yankees. But the thing with minor league baseball, just like indie wrestling, you never know. You might be seeing the next big thing.
And the guys are playing really hard because they want,
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't have the multi-million-dollar contracts. They're chasing their dream. They're hoping that they're gonna, I don't even know what they make at the that lower, that's the low Class A baseball. What could they possibly even make? I mean, I'm sure
Two quick
that
things. Oh, Benny, I was just going to say, in the 80s, mid 80s, 84 to 88, went to Vero Beach for Dodger, town where they, before they moved their spring training to Arizona like everybody else, and just had a blast. You could see, I mean, obviously I love AAA baseball, but you could see all the guys playing and get close and talk to them. But I was getting off on going up to 60s legends, Koufax, Drysdale, and you could have some one-on-one and just ask them whatever the hell you wanted to ask, or Lasorda. It's amazing, and also a place where some of the wrestlers. Uh, I guess it was Miami. Monty Stone Crab. I don't know if that's in all, because Florida has so many great food towns, but is Stone Crab, is that like all over the place? Is we had some great meals
not
after
in the
wrestling
Tampa Bay
shows.
area that I know of.
Have you eaten in Miami? I'm
I
pretty
have
sure,
not. Nope. Now I did live
Okay.
in Hagerstown, Maryland, where crab was a huge thing, and minor league baseball was a huge thing. I bought this was in 1986. I had moved from Long Island to Hagerstown, Maryland. The Hagerstown Suns were the Class A team for the Baltimore Orioles in the Carolina League. I remember I bought two season tickets for $250 total. So that was 140 home, 170 and 70.
Wow.
But the nice thing about if you decided not to go for 4 or 5 games, you could bring 5 people you could always use those tickets. And but the nice thing about it, number one, you'd see trying to think, Jim Palmer made a rehab start there. I think Tippy Martinez from the Orioles. So you'd see the occasional guy who was on the DL. They'd send him to Hagerstown for a rehab start, and then every once in a while you'd look in the crowd, and it's like, aren't you Frank Robinson?
Mm.
I saw Frank Robinson there. I saw Don Buford there. A couple of the guys from the '69 Orioles team. And I think a guy from the Negro Leagues, Judy Johnson, a legend from the
Oh,
Negro League. So yeah, and they had great food. That was a very and most minor league parks are very family friendly, and you're going to get some very good, not too expensive food. And there's usually I used to go to the Dunedin Blue Jays games a while back. I mean, I still do, but they used to have a contest every seventh inning. It was a baseball trivia, and after a while they got tired of giving me the prize. I probably won about 15 times because they're pretty easy questions. But yeah, I love minor league baseball. I could talk all night just about that and the food.
Well, that
very
sounds
quickly,
great.
let me just say this. After in the 70s, I started going and spending summers there from 74 on, and I wanted to mark out and go to stuff that we had no access to. Carvel's, which was big. I don't know,
Oh God,
Jonathan, if you've heard of that, but
Carvel.
Yeah,
the
we don't have them out here.
insane
Oh
ice
man.
cream.
We don't
And
have that, but we get all the commercials from Buffalo.
wow.
So
So you
like
know all about Fudgy the Whale,
But there was a
Denny's
lot
thing,
more.
right?
Cookie Puss
Yoo-hoos,
is on my bucket list.
Cookie
yeah,
Fudge.
Yoo-hoos, and I forget what the milk drink, the chocolate milk drink in.
Yeah, Yoo-hoo.
Yoo-hoo.
Okay, is that in egg creams and
No,
going
it's just
to these
I
No.
different
actually
places
found
after
out the other
wrestling, after
day.
MSG wrestling, you go and you want to go out and eat. We also got a couple of times the Holland Hotel where the upstairs Napolitano and the rest of us would always have to before every show get Skolin to give us our passes, and then we go down there and see who was eating, drinking, what Andre was doing, how much he was drinking, and I should say. December 74, I think I've said this on this show. Andre tried breaking the Guinness Book of World Records for drinking consecutive cans of beer. And this was when Louis Tillet, our genius booker, Jules Strongbow, had retired. And we start with, it was almost like a Trojan horse from Atlanta. Louis Tillet, who almost killed our territory. Great wrestler, nice guy. But he had a thing for Montreal wrestlers. So there was all of these guys there when Andre was trying to do that. It was our last Christmas TV taping at Channel 13 in Los Angeles off Hollywood Boulevard. And there's Carpentier, there's Dino Bravo, Wolfman Farkas, Pampero Firpo, and some other guys. So when all the fans were done with the TV taping, all the fans were let go and out of there and went home because the taping started at 6 and then would air at 8. So they got a little time to do post-production on a 90-minute show. So Andre's trying to do this, and he was like 20, 22 cans. There was an official person from Guinness Records there. and he just passed, conked out about 22 cans before whatever the record was at that time of 100, or I think it was actually 212 was the record, but he got really close and then just passed out.
Wait,
Because I think
the
he probably
record's
had some earlier in the day. He'd had some alcohol, but so we're getting a
212
little
cans
off
of
of,
beer?
yeah, consecutive cans of beer.
Wow.
It was crazy.
I thought
The
Andre
whole,
had the record at 100. So,
no,
I know
this
he's
was a
done over
fairly big
100, but
record.
I didn't know the record was, wow.
that's where you fit that all in is
I'm probably
questionable.
off on the number, but it was some insane number, and he came pretty close. We're still talking food because he would pack away. If you ever went out, like ask Dave Brzezinski, who went all over Ontario with Andre, and he would eat. Even though he had acromegaly, he was like eat enough for 6, 7 people.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the only Andre the Giant story I have, which is not actually my story, but it's my father's story. He actually saw Andre the Giant at Sears Fine Foods in San Francisco,
wow.
downtown San Francisco, and apparently they just surrounded
That's the
him
little
with like.
pancake place where you get like 40 little teeny silver dollar pancakes right on Powell. That's where my dental office was, right there, Powell and
Yeah,
Sutter.
yeah, and my dad's medical office was in 450 Sutter too.
Yeah,
So
same. I was on
he,
the 16th floor.
yeah, and so Andre apparently was just surrounded. They like moved like 4 tables around him, and they just filled all the tables up with every food they had. I mean, Andre was just like basically said, "Give me one." You looked at the menu and said, "Give me one of everything," and they just
Our
brought
fire
everything out to
alarm
him.
is going off. I'm going to leave, but I want to say this on one of Roy Scher's battle royals. This was way before the Freak Show MMA group with pro wrestlers in Japan started in the 90s. That Aja Kong started out with. Actually, Awesome Kong was. They were doing a pigtails crazy gimmick, whatever the name of that promotion was. But there was Andre, Haystack Calhoun, Man Mountain Mike, and the McCreary twins, who'd won the Guinness Book of World Record as the
Oh,
world's
McGuire,
heaviest
yeah.
twins. And they were all in one January annual 18-man battle royal that Shire had at the Cow Palace. I think that year was
And the
75,
ring didn't
74, maybe
break.
74. It was insane, all of these guys. And they all went out to dinner together because Shire would never pick up the tab. So the boys had to take themselves out. But all of these guys closed out. It was a Little Joe's in North Beach, the Italian district of San Francisco.
I'm surprised the ring didn't break with all those guys in there.
I
Anyway,
want to know who
Mike,
took the bump over the top rope out of
yeah,
that group.
Nobody took
Andre would
nobody
have,
took bumps.
but Andre didn't.
If you ever, I'm writing an article about that, about the time Man Mountain Mike, who was a clone of Haystack Calhoun, and before them, the both of them, Happy
Happy
Humphreys,
Humphrey.
and they had a match in LA at the Olympic in 74. I think it was August or July of 74, with what was advertised as the world's heaviest, Renato de Colombia. He was a 300-pound referee, refereeing Haystack Calhoun against Man Mountain Mike, who had worked weights. They were both like in the upper 400s, but they were billed in the 600s. Only in wrestling can they add 200 pounds to somebody. Whereas most women like to underbill their weight, but when you're a super heavyweight, you're going the other way. So anyway, you guys have a great, awesome show. Love the topic idea, Russ. So because there's
yeah,
nothing more fun than going out either with your friends or with the boys, the wrestlers, after show and having some good food and lots of great brews.
that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of things happened at that Applebee's or the Applebee's next to All Pro Wrestling.
Oh,
You
wait, that's
know,
another thing. When we went with the wrestlers before Cow Palace shows, many hours before, there was a bowling alley that had actually great food. Ask Alan Bolte about that. That guy now has broken Jimmy Lennon Sr.'s record because he began announcing for Roy Shire at all the shows, but particularly the Cow Palace, and doing Roy's program that I did the photos for,
yeah, we
December of
gotta have Alan
73.
back
He
on.
continues to ring announce that stuff at Indies
Well, we'll
and
we'll
some
get we'll
MMA.
grab Alan on sometime in the near
Ask him
future.
though about all the boys, Pat and Peter McVie and Rocky Johnson and Ray Stevens and Pepper Gomez going to that place. And lastly, Pepper Gomez, when he left wrestling, he became the maitre d' and he was a server at Skoma's restaurant in
Yes,
San
I
Francisco,
remember
right
that.
on the water.
Yeah, I remember in
And
Sausalito.
people would go in there, wrestling marks would go in there and request him to be their server. Pepper, I didn't think cared for that, but he was very proud of.
Well, he helped in tips. All right,
Yeah.
Michael, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Good night, you guys.
All
Thank
right,
you. Thank
good
you.
night.
Come on.
Let me go and pull it. So anyway, guys, so there we are. I muted him. He'll log off sometime. I wanted to talk about one of the more major stories that I know of as far as food and wrestling goes, and I wanted to be the one to talk about it. My favorite food and wrestling story is the one where Magnificent Morocco beat some jobber while eating a meatball sub during the match.
You stole mine, but that's
Did I?
great.
Well,
Though.
I'm the host. So
No, it's okay though. It's such a
get
good
chance
story.
I get it's my show, so I get to pull that off.
Absolutely. First
But
executive
it's
privilege.
if anyone hasn't seen it, you got to go to YouTube and watch it because it's being managed by Captain Albino. You can talk about the punchline though, if you want, where when the match was done, what happened.
Oh, after the match, didn't Captain Lou take a header on the meatball sub?
Yeah, he slipped on the sandwich that Morocco left on the ring steps, and he did a total. I mean, it was a pretty serious fall, but Captain Lou Albano totally sold it, and it was hilarious, and it's one of the great moments of food and wrestling. And just when people talk about wrestling, they often leave out the Magnificent Morocco as one of the greats of his time.
In the early 80s, geez.
It's too bad because I think he was really an exceptional. He was one of my favorites growing up. I thought he was amazing as an Intercontinental Champion. And I mean, he has that moment where Snuka did the dive out on him, off the top of the cage. And, his feud with Snuka was fantastic, but the arrogance and it's been such a great shtick. Nobody's ever done it since. Kerry Eaton in the middle of the ring while beating somebody up, and that was really great shtick. Jonathan, you've seen it, right?
I have. I just always wondered how he kept it down through the match.
Well, because it wasn't a very physical match. He
wasn't really doing a whole lot.
No, he didn't take any bumps. He just threw a guy around for 5 minutes, and then he was chomping on the sandwich during the match. But he didn't. He would put the guy in a shoulder breaker and have the sandwich in one hand and giving the guy a shoulder breaker with his other arm because he was so strong.
No, I remember the part where I think this is by that point he was finishing people off with the pile driver, not the Asiatic spike.
Yeah, no, it was the shoulder breaker. It was the shoulder breaker. Was
shoulder breaker that time?
Yes.
I just remember.
I think he also did have a tombstone pile driver as well, didn't he?
Yeah. He did the Undertaker's pile driver before the Undertaker, and better. His looked more dangerous because it always seemed like just barely in control, whereas the Undertaker really kind of locks his opponent in.
Right. And keeps him.
But I remember the part of the match I remember, weirdly enough, is so he's like chomping down on the sandwich, and then after the match is done, he winds up wiping presumably like the sauce and the grease left over from the sandwich on his opponent.
Total disdain. Total disdain.
That's I remember Roddy Piper a little bit later when he was kind of in full heel mode in the WWF would do stuff like blow his nose on his opponent or that kind of thing. To me, Morocco that was probably next to Ted DiBiase stuffing a dollar bill down his opponent's throat after a match, the best post-match taunt I've seen.
Very degrading, right?
So yes, absolutely. So if I stole your thunder, Benny, I'm sorry, but what would be another food and wrestling story you might have?
One of my favorites, and I didn't see it till many years later, was when I can't think of the guy's name from Mid-South Wrestling, was interviewing Cornette and the Midnight Express right after they had won the Mid-South Tag Team title, and they were celebrating with a cake. And while was it Condrey and Eaton were parading around the ring, celebrating with the fans who hated their guts anyway. But Cornette is bending down to cut the cake, And as he bends down to cut the cake, here come the Rock and Roll Express, and of course, like they stick his head right in the cake, and he takes a header. And I mean, but there was an end game to this because the after that, Cornette confronted Bill Watts, still with cake on his face, I think, and he said his mother was going to buy the territory, and Watts was going to swab the lavatories, but I guess Cornette put his hand on Watts, and he said, "Do that one more time, and you'll regret it," or something like that. And Cornette poked him, and Watts, I mean, he slapped the living shit out of Cornette, and Cornette did a 360, and I mean, literally crawled back to the locker room. But I mean, that torched this nuclear feud between the Midnight Express, and I guess didn't Watts wind up coming out of retirement, I believe, and get a partner? I forget who it was, but I mean, the food just started this massive feud.
Well, yeah, no, it's that especially whenever you see wrestling, you see a cake involved.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen to the cake, right?
Someone's going in, like when they do all the weddings that they've done. And whenever the cake, they always wait till the cake is being served, and then cake fight. Was it Mad Dog Vachon, or was it Butcher Vachon had his wedding? Vince McMahon had, did a wedding with one of the Vachons, and it turned
Paul
into
Vachon.
What?
Paul the Butcher Vachon.
Was it the Butcher? Okay, and it turned into a total madcap, Three Stooges like cake fighting, pie throwing contest, which, by the way, was always my favorite part of the Three Stooges, is when there would be a big pie fight.
Oh, pie, yeah. What's better than that?
There isn't. That's one of my favorite gags, physical gags of all time. So much so that when I had my 41st birthday with California Championship Wrestling, that was also celebrated with, at the end of the show, me getting a massive pie in the face from my broadcast partner, which was one of the great moments.
That's funny you say that, because when I got married the first time in 1980, my fellow coworkers at Citibank had a party for me, like a wedding shower kind of thing. And we were at a restaurant, and they handed me a lobster bib. They said, "We have a surprise for you." And I'm thinking, man, because I love lobster, that's like my kryptonite. So I'm putting this lobster bib on. They say, "Close your eyes." And I'm thinking, all right, here it comes. Next thing I know, full on chocolate, vanilla pie, right in the banana cream pie it was. And they must have known me very well, because the very first words out of my mouth was, "What, no chocolate?" Which 2 seconds later, I got the chocolate pie. So, I mean, how many people can say they got a pie in the face? I got 2 of them.
You got 2. Okay, that's pretty good. So, Jonathan, throw out one of your food stories that you've got.
So I'm basically just going to go with the fact that for most of my early fandom, the one way that you would always know a wrestler was a complete deranged antisocial maniac was they would eat something weird. It could be the Moondogs with their bone. It could be the copious amounts of raw chicken consumed by Kamala or the Wild Samoans, raw fish, liver, you name it. If you wanted to establish that a wrestler was
Moondog
crazy,
Mean used to do the live goldfish.
Yeah, the 2 things you would have is the wrestler would not speak English, and they would have a manager or handler do all their talking for them, and they would appear on camera eating raw chicken, which is very unsanitary. I get it, but if you want to,
I don't think Abdullah the Butcher worried that much. He was he disease somehow, found its way around him.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up Abdullah the Butcher, because one of my wrestling tragically never to be fulfilled food bucket list items is, at one point, Abdullah the Butcher had 2 restaurants, one near Atlanta and one in Japan, called Abdullah the Butcher's House of Ribs and Chinese Food. And I've seen the Yelp reviews for this place, and they're mixed. But darn if I ever wanted to get out there. That was a bucket list. That's there. Ribera Steakhouse is also there. Jim Ross at one point briefly had a restaurant, but that closed within a year. The other wrestling food related memory is the first episode of Monday Nitro, which came live from the Mall of America in Minnesota. And the reason that it was live from the Mall of America was that Hulk Hogan coincidentally just happened to be opening a fast food restaurant in the food court called Hulk Hogan's Pastamania.
Pastamania.
So, which also closed within a year. But if you go back and you watch the first episode of Nitro, it is basically an hour-long infomercial for Hulk Hogan's Pastamania and his Hulk U's and his Hulkaroos and the kids menu and everything like that. And oh, by the way, Lex Luger shows up.
Well,
So-
you know, that does bring up an interesting food-related wrestling story, which is that I found out after George Foreman had died that the George Foreman grill was actually offered to Hulk Hogan first. And
The
he
inventor
turned
of the
it
George
down.
Foreman grill has debunked that.
Really? Because he,
Yeah. Hulk
well-
Hogan also claims that he was the original choice to play Randy the Ram in The Wrestler. And I think
That's true,
I think
too.
our mutual friend Evan would disagree.
That's true too. And he said he was going to be the guitarist for Metallica and all this other stuff. But
And President of the United States. He might be an improvement even now.
Yes, even 6 feet under, he might be a better president than we have now. But because what I had heard from other sources that he was afraid that the George Foreman grill would short out, cause fires, and he would be held responsible. So he instead went with a meatball maker. Hulk Hogan went with like a
I heard a blender.
a blender. Okay. I think it was a non-electric device, just one that you used like a mold that you would use to mold meatballs with. I don't know, Benny. What's your take on that? What have you?
Yeah,
read?
I used to listen to Bubba the Love Sponge back in the day when I first moved down here. Because at that point, this is before the whole the scandal happened, and he and Hogan were really, really like best friends. And Hogan would call in to the show probably 3 times a week. And he told that story that, whatever, I forgot what it was, I thought it was a blender. And he got maybe made like 150 grand on it, and Foreman made like 48 million bucks on but I've also heard that story wasn't true. As far as that, he didn't get the choice.
Okay. Well, it doesn't reflect well on Hogan if he was right and he did have the choice and didn't go with it anyway. So it'd probably be better if he didn't, if that story wasn't associated with him. But either way, it seemed he made enough bad decisions.
Wait, so that's what doesn't reflect well on Hogan?
What?
So that's what doesn't reflect well on Hogan?
Well, I mean, for himself, that he didn't make the money that he thought he deserved. Yes, but the other elements of like his racism and things like that, obviously that looks a lot worse on him. But he never perceived it that way. He always perceived, he was always, for him, money was the thing that meant the most amount, and so that he didn't make as much money as he thought he deserved. I mean, for the fact that he was worth only like about 10 million when he died, maybe 20 million when he died, because he owed so many and he spent so frequently, and then his divorces, took away a lot of what he'd earned. That it's kind of surprising that, like Ozzy Osbourne had an estate worth like 20 times the amount that Hulk Hogan was when Ozzy Osbourne died versus when Hulk Hogan died.
Melinda got a big chunk of that, though, right?
Yeah, but I think like a lot of guys from that era that just spent very conspicuously,
Well, speaking of wrestlers with no money and food, how about now Ric Flair for a while was endorsing these Woo Wings. I guess it was a chain of whatever happened with that. Are they even still in business?
I think they took out a loan from Ric Flair Finance.
No, yeah, that would. Yeah, I just remember his male enhancement stuff that he was pushing. So that obviously.
Was he really doing that?
Well,
Yeah.
he did for a little bit. Yeah, I think he put his name on anything that would give him any cash in hand. Considering, God, he just turned 77. Can you believe that Ric Flair just turned 77?
And he wants to wrestle again.
In wrestling years, Ric Flair's 77 is like an average human being is like 385 years. I mean, he's lived like well past like any kind of expiration date that most wrestlers that had the kind of schedule he had and road conditions he had. Although,
Well,
I don't think
And
it
the
was,
abuse he's put his own body through.
right.
but I don't think he was a gigantic steroid user. I'm sure he used them, but I don't think he
No,
used
but
them.
so even in his autobiography, which came out well over 20 years ago now, I think, the WWE licensed one, he talks about how he'd been diagnosed with alcoholic cardiomyopathy. So he's been in some degree of heart failure for a lot longer than one would expect to still
Yeah,
be
and he had a
around.
heart attack in the ring too. Which again, but he still wants to go back in there. This last
Well,
time in the
he
ring.
said that's how he wants to go out. And, I
Like
would hope
literally.
I would hope nobody decides to help him with that at this point.
I saw footage of Luke, Bushwhacker Luke, in the ring the other night. So it just makes you say there is no. I think he's like 74 or something.
Well,
Nearly 80 years old.
the
So
Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, is going to wrestle, and he's 83.
wow. Again, I hope nothing bad happens to him. I love the Boogie Woogie Man, but there's a certain level at which, I mean,
Well,
in
Dory
my late,
Funk was going on until late 70s, early 80s.
Dory Funk
yeah,
wrestled within the last 2 years, and I
Yeah,
mean,
kind of.
I've heard that Mil Mastras even wants to try to wrestle one more time. So you
you know,
never,
but if they promote it as nostalgia, like what now we're going to talk baseball here for a minute. One of my favorite games or times of the season in baseball always was the old timers game. And and now I'm talking like late '60s. So you had like Whitey, Mickey was recently retired, but then you had like guys like Bill Dickey was still around, Joe DiMaggio, and I remember Joe DiMaggio hitting a ground rule double into the left field bleachers at Yankee Stadium, but it took him about 5 minutes to get to second
to get
base.
to second base.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's which it's not realistic that an 83-year-old man can wrestle. I mean.
No, I think even when you're like in your 50s, you should really probably hang it up. I mean, not that as a manager I did any wrestling, but I can't take any kind of a bump now. I look back at like what I did in my 30s and 40s, and I go, man, I'm glad I did it then because there's ain't no way I could be doing it now. There's absolutely, body slam. If I took one now, would probably take me a month and a half to recover from, if I could even recover from it at that point, and probably put me, in a hospital. So, but we see CM Punk still, and we have Randy Orton in the main event. So,
I
but
think he's 46, Randy Orton.
yeah, I thought he
Your
was
Punk
50.
is 47 or 48.
Yeah, so real close to 50. But another restaurant I wanted to point out, which is really successful, that I didn't get to go to, but my brother did, and that was Mean Gene's Burgers. And I do have from my brother a gift of a Mean Gene t-shirt that says "Bite Me" on the back, which is great. I mean, or it says "Bite Me" on the front, has Mean Gene Okerlund's picture on the back. And just walking around, with a t-shirt that says "Bite Me" on it, you get a lot of very interesting responses. But my recommendation is don't sit at the front row of a comedy show with a giant "Bite Me" shirt on. That you will get attention from the
Oh,
comedians.
sure. Wait, now did Mean Gene own a restaurant?
Yeah, yeah.
Where was that?
It
Minnesota.
was in California.
Oh,
It
really?
was, yeah, it was.
I would have guessed Minneapolis or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was over in not Oakdale, but like way northern California. And my brother was driving through town, saw it, and stopped there and got a mean. Now that being said, I've met Mean Gene, but I never had one of his burgers. So that was they're all closed now, but they used to be. Maybe it was in Ontario. I'm trying to remember
So
where.
there used to be over 100 of them
Yeah,
worldwide.
yeah.
They were in military bases in Okinawa, Guam, and Diego Garcia.
Wow.
I had no
Yeah.
idea.
So there you see, you do a program on food, you learn something about Mean Gene, Omania, and Mean Gene's Burgers. But here's another food story that I've got for you, and that involves the great Khali. Okay, As you know or may not know, he got to start in All Pro Wrestling. He came in off the boat, literally from India. Didn't speak a word of English. And APW, even though it wasn't legal, it was a warehouse in an industrial part of town. I can say this now that there's all principles are well past any statute of limitations. They had a total like illegal like housing situation going on there. They converted a bunch of the parts of the warehouse into sleeping quarters for the wrestlers because like Ali Dilip had nowhere to go. He had nowhere. He didn't have any family here. He was brought to America. Most people don't know this. He was brought to America by this guy named Dr. Kumar, who, and I will say this honestly, especially now that statute of limitations run on all this stuff. I've met a lot of very weird people in professional wrestling because weird people gravitate towards wrestling, but there was nobody weirder and nobody gave me that eerie vibe than Dr. Kumar. Dr. Kumar was one of the most sinister human beings I have ever met. And he treated Dilip Singh like a total, complete slave. Apparently, he was from the upper caste, and Dilip was from the lowest caste. And he found Dilip literally lying in the gutter, doing nothing. And he brought him into his house, put him in a basement, just told him to lift weights. And he said, eventually I'll find a place for you. And then, Dilip started getting noticed by Indian bodybuilding society. And then he said, hey, what about wrestling? And he sent him to the United States without like any support or anything like that. So Dilip was just kind of hanging around at APW, living there, but just didn't have anything to do, other than get ready to wrestle. And so in between shows, he was just hanging out. I mean, what do you do when you're, 7 feet tall ex-bodybuilder? And he had almost no money. So it's ironic now that he's like a multimillionaire, but he all he could afford to eat was tuna. So you have this giant guy eating can after can of tuna. And like most, young men, he wasn't the most sanitary of them. So he'd leave the cans of tuna all around the gym. And we'd find them. And they were so gross. They were so disgusting. So one time when Dilip fell asleep, one of the wrestlers gathered up all the tuna cans that were half full that Dilip left lying around. And we stacked them all. Oh, I didn't. He stacked them all over like Dilip's chest and on his head and and all over him. And when Dilip woke up, all the tuna spilled all over him. And when Dilip discovered that, he went and chased the guy that did that literally all around the gym for like 4 or 5 times. So he finally caught him and he shook the hell out of him and, don't do that. Don't do that. You're an asshole. You're an asshole. It's like, you can speak English. That was like the first time we heard him actually speak anything. So that's, that's a Dilip Singh story for you, food story for you. Hey, guys, got any other wrestling food stories you want to throw out there?
Well, I not necessarily a story, but like while you were telling that story, it just occurred to me, back in the territory days when these guys were wrestling, 6-7 nights a week, what did they eat? I mean, how did they eat? You didn't really. I can't imagine the stuff at restaurants.
There's a story about Stone Cold buying a bag of potatoes with like the only money he had, and like buying like a 20-pound bag of potatoes and living off of the potatoes so he could get to another show and get paid for the next show that he worked.
Now, where was he when he did that? What territory?
It's just all the way back in the Florida stuff, or the when he was working the Southern territories. I think maybe
I think that was Memphis.
Memphis. Thank you.
Because the Jarretts were notoriously poor paying.
Didn't he not want to work with Jeff Jarrett because of that? That's what I had heard.
Well, there's also stuff about he didn't like Jeff Jarrett's religious stance because he thought when Stone Cold wrote the Steve Austin 316 on there, but that was sacrilegious. And, you know, he also thought that he was kind of a diva in the ring and didn't want to get physical. And a lot of times when he wanted to get physical on stuff. So, yeah, those two never really got along. But, yeah, I mean, and it's not unusual. I mean, when I would do shows, like some of the guys, the lower end card guys that were, you know, hot dog and a handshake, no, they didn't even get the hot dog. You know, the feds that I was with were so broke that they didn't even have hot dogs.
Like the Subway coupon.
They didn't even get a Subway coupon, and like for like the refs, like they didn't pay the refs at all. And so sometimes I'd take like two of the refs and one of the timekeepers, one of the guys that was a worker timekeeper, to the shows when I would drive to CCW on my way in, and I would actually get them like a 99-cent cheeseburger, and they were like really thankful. Although this one guy we were doing a show and it was 90 degrees at bell time, and this was at like 8 at night. It was still 90 degrees because you're in the Central Valley in the summer, and he reffed 4 matches that night, and he was so exhausted. When I got him to like Taco Bell, and he just like wolfed everything down, as soon as he was done, he threw it all back up. He was just so incredibly exhausted from you know, and he just tried to force down the food. He was so hungry, but then his system just couldn't take like that much food that quickly, and that's another story that I remember is I remember watching the Road Warriors against the Powers of Pain, and Hawk admitted that he had gone to Chinese food right before the match, and he got a chair shot in the stomach, and he all over the place. So I learned a very important lesson, which is before the show, don't eat. If you're taking a bump,
Why would you do that?
do not eat. Do not eat. You know, wait till after the show. Most of the wrestlers I know go out after a show to eat, but I guess Hawk just felt too hungry, and it was like an all-you-can-eat Chinese thing, so he just kept eating, and you know, paid the price for it. And I have one more wrestling food story, and that was I used to manage this guy named Boom Boom Kamini, as the Iron Sheik Kamini, or Sheik Ali Boom Boom. So he was getting dressed up. This is right before 9/11, by the way. We had to stop that gimmick when 9/11 happened. But every time I would have a pre-match meal or get like a pre-match snack, he would come over. He's like a big guy, like 310 pounds. He would come over, grab whatever I was eating, shove it into his mouth, and just eat it. It didn't matter what I was trying to eat. He would eat it right off of me. And so then I found out he hated mustard. So I made sure that everything I ate before the match was covered in mustard, even if it was something you didn't necessarily want to have covered in mustard. If I get like a sandwich, I'd actually put mustard on the outside of the bread, so you know, like, not to mess with it ahead of time. So, you know, sometimes when you find a bully in the locker room, just find out what he won't eat, and then if you eat that, you'll be safe. So that's wrestlers and food. It's an interesting combination. Do you guys have?
But how did a wrestler back in the 70s stay healthy, though? Because, you know, just in the WWF.
Yeah, most of them were big sides of beef when you look at them. You know,
right, but I mean, you're doing a show in Philadelphia, and then you have to drive to Bangor, Maine, which is probably 7 or 8 hour drive. You're going to have to stop for food once or twice. Where, you know, the best you're probably going to do is a diner, because you're trying to make a town in, you know, a certain amount of hours. Yeah, the worst is you're going to get the old do the old baloney blowout.
So a lot of them did that. Nikolai Volkov actually used to catch a fair bit of heat among the wrestlers because, among other things, he was one of those guys who basically saved half of every penny he ever earned in wrestling.
He was very frugal, yes.
Very frugal, and
heard a lot about
well liked and very well respected. But he was notorious for not eating out on the road. He would go to a town, do a quick grocery run, and he kept a hot plate with him.
Yes.
And so, you know, they'd get to the hotel or wherever they were bunking up, and he would cook. And the Iron Sheik, for example, when they were working together often, would make fun of him constantly for it. But, I mean, he retired in better shape than a lot of other guys.
Yeah.
So not a story, but I've got a question for both of you gentlemen. You know what we don't have up here in Canada, which seems to be like the most important apocryphal place to eat in American wrestling? Waffle House. What is
We
the
don't have
deal
them
with
in
Waffle
California,
House?
by the way. I do want to point out there's no Waffle Houses
No Waffle
in
House in
California.
California?
No. So we're just as bad as Canada.
Okay.
But I've been to
gonna
Waffle
say,
House.
and there is a Waffle House like literally on every corner here in Florida. But I will
Florida.
tell you, I'm kind of a snob. I have never eaten at a Waffle House. I will do
You
it
have Grandma
once.
Sally's.
Oh yeah, every day. I almost feel like I'd be committing like food adultery if I went to the Waffle House for breakfast. But I will do it. I have to check it off my bucket list to go at least once.
Oh, you've never been?
No, never been to
Okay.
a Waffle House.
And they're all over the South, though. It's true.
There's, I mean, literally in Newport Richey, Port Richey, there's at least 5 of them
right.
where I
I
live.
mean, they're kind of like, a Denny's or, just trying to think of, although they're
IHOP?
gone. IHOP. They're
I,
very
I
similar
think
to
it's a
them.
little bit lower on the food chain than a Denny's or an IHOP, though.
That's saying something.
Which says something.
Yeah,
Well, if you want to watch a fight break out at like 4 a.m, that's like the place to go. Apparently,
it's
is
Waffle House.
Waffle
Yeah.
House.
Remember
They're
Kevin
well known
Nash
for it.
told CM Punk he looked, what did he say? He looked like a short order cook at a Pikesville Waffle House. Great line.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to throw out one more wrestling story that I'm surprised that you guys didn't launch out on, but as long as we're running towards the end of the show, the story about Ken Patera and Mr. Saito, and them breaking into a McDonald's because they were starving after a show and McDonald's closed, and Ken Patera threw that huge boulder through their window.
Not according to him. According to him, it was a disgruntled employee behind him, which often happens at 2 a.m, right?
Who else can lift up like a 400-pound rock and throw it anywhere?
Yeah,
I don't know. You tell me that there's no hash browns after 11? Let's go with that.
Yeah, oh yeah, 11 in the morning. They don't give you hash browns at McDonald's, but
The way he told us, because he was on Dan and Benny, he was our 100th episode guest, and he said that he went in there. Saito, I guess, was still in the hotel room. I guess Saito had a bum leg, and Patera actually walked over to the McDonald's. I think it was somewhere in Wisconsin, from the hotel, and he saw the burgers there. They had closed, but he said, "I'll pay you like X amount of money for the burgers." And they said something like, "No, we're shooting a commercial." I mean, like at some ungodly hour of the night, but it pissed him off so much that he threw the rock, and then he went back to the hotel. And I don't know how many cops him and Saito took out, but it was probably in the
like
double
12.
digits at least. Yeah.
It's like 12 of them. Yeah. And I remember reading that, in the newspaper, and I was just showing my friend because at the time this was like during kayfabe, and there was all these people saying, all these wrestlers, they're all fake and they don't really know how to fight. And I was like, the one thing you don't want to do is piss off some of these guys because whether you think wrestling is fake or not, these guys are tough dudes, and Ken Patera and Mr. Saito are certainly two of the tougher dudes in wrestling. And that and the John Stossel interview, which just had the anniversary of the head slapping thing with Dr. D. David Schultz. That just
And the
came
late
through.
Richard Belzer.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, that's right about the end of the show here, guys. But if you guys have anything to promote or anything you want to talk about, put your social media stuff up there. Benny?
Well, I got tomorrow night. I have True Crime with the Bad Girl, the Playa, and Dangerous Dave at 6 o'clock. Wednesday is my wrestling show When It Was Real with Nikita Brezhnikov. I also produce the Twisted Turnbuckle podcast on Thursdays at 7:05, and they're all on my channel, the Playa Entertainment Network. And then on Sundays at 3 o'clock on Want Radio, it's an internet radio station, I am Benny the Jet. I am living a life as a DJ every Sunday.
Nice. Now, when am I going to be on one of these podcasts? When am I going to be on the When It Was Real? You and Nikita should have me on. I've had you guys as guests on my show enough times. You guys got to bring me on there.
You really, we're doing a Hollywood Square show and the other one on Thursday. I'm going to recommend you for that one.
Yeah, 'cause no one more square than me. Jonathan, what's your?
I got nothing.
You have something.
Now, I haven't been on the show for a little while. I've actually kind of shifted away from the column that I was doing. I'm always happy to get back into writing if anybody's looking for a handsome and debonair wrestling columnist. But in the meantime, I've been doing a lot more kind of legal writing than I have wrestling.
Well, it's still good to have you back on the show. You're
Happy to
always
be
welcome
here.
to be, a guest host on our show. We're always happy to have you on there.
Tell
Give the
Meltzer to hire
candidate-
me.
Yeah, exactly. I can give you double my salary if you join back up with us. I'll give you double what I earn from this show, which
It's worth about as much as my legal advice.
exactly, very much so. Guys, it's great to have you on the show. Good to see you again. And we've got the 6th anniversary show coming up in a couple months, and it won't be the same show unless you guys are part of it.
Absolutely.
Happy to be there.
So I'll give, and there'll be more announcements and everything like that coming up. But anyway, great to have you on. Have a great rest of the new month of March. So the year just keeps on moving quickly, and time moves forward. But great to have you
It
on.
really does.
Great to have you on. So good night,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
We'll see y'all next week.
Good night.